All right, we're going to drop 50 podcast tips in 10 minutes or less here in this video. I'm actually going to set a stopwatch, make sure I don't go over, and split it up into 5 categories. We want to give you 10 tips for getting started, some podcast gear tips, recording and interview tips, editing your podcast, and the last category is going to be 10 tips to help you keep going because everyone knows being consistent and getting that episode after episode published is one of the hardest parts, and we got some tips for that. If I'm doing the math right, 5 categories, each category is 2 minutes each, so let's get started. All right, 10 tips for getting started, and definitely stick around to the last one. Hopefully it gets you jump-started into your podcast. Number 1, when you're starting a podcast or thinking what to talk about, make sure to stick to your passions. What do you enjoy talking about? What are you knowledgeable about? What can you talk about for hours with your friends or family members? That's what you want a podcast about. If you're going to do episode after episode, make sure it's something you're actually interested in. And number 2, whatever it is you're interested in, find the unique angle about that topic. If you're interested in pop culture, there's already hundreds, if not thousands, of podcasts about that topic. If you wanted to cover sports, covering about every major league sport here in the US, that's going to be too wide, too broad of a topic. But if you say, I want to cover this one high school basketball team, tell the stories of those players, their families, that's immediately interesting, it adds drama, and you'll be able to find a loyal fan base that will actually help you grow your show and find a wider audience later. And number 3, when you find that niche topic, make sure you restrict yourself to that actual topic. When people get off track or there's lots of small talk, banter, and rabbit trails about things that the podcast isn't really made for or about, you're going to have listeners tune out and you're going to see that retention graph drop. And I'm going to talk about the retention graph and some of the metrics in the last 10 tips of this video, but make sure you stick to your topic. Number 4, when you're planning your show, be creative in your title. Your title and your podcast artwork are one of the things that make your podcast stand out from everyone else. So if you have a name for your show, actually search it in Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Are there a bunch of other shows with that name or similar names? Then you might want to think of something different. This is a great use of AI tools like ChatGPT to help you rethink some of those titles and generate ideas. Speaking of cover art, tip number 5 is make sure you have some visually appealing and engaging artwork. Artwork that's boring or has a lot of text, it's not going to stand out. And when people are scrolling through Apple Podcasts and Spotify, the artwork is like the cover page of your show that people are going to see first. So make sure it's eye-catching. Number 6, as you're planning your show, plan out the first 10 episodes. Again, one of the hardest things to do is actually get to that 10 episode mark and then past it. So if you plan out even just rough ideas, topics, maybe guest ideas for those first 10 episodes, it'll give you a jump start. Which is number 7, if you're going to have a co-host or interview guest, book those first 10 episodes right now. Set the dates, set the time, send out cold emails, which we'll talk about in one of the later sections, and make sure you have someone booked for all those different podcast episodes. Number 8, when you're starting out, dedicate a space in your house or apartment where you can record consistently. You might not be able to build a whole home studio, although if you want to, we have a video about that. Check it out above or in the description. But if it's an audio podcast, best place is probably your closet. That's a great sound dampening, lots of clothes, and just record there every time. Number 9, you're going to need a podcast host for the audio version of your show. Buzzsprout and Transistor.fm are great hosts with lots of features for podcast creators. We actually have a whole video talking about podcast hosts. Check it out above or in the description. And number 10, this is a big one if you're getting started. Just hit record, just start. Get that first episode out there. A lot of times we suffer from analysis paralysis. We feel we have to have the perfect gear, which we're going to talk about in the next section, or we need to have the right topics or the right guest. But just start recording. There's actually some great tips from Mr. Beast, the biggest YouTuber around, about this analysis paralysis issue. If you want to check out our video about him, check it out above or in the description. Here's 10 tips on podcast gear. And tips 1 through 9 are not going to mean much unless you do number 10. So let's jump into it. Number 1, you don't need expensive gear to podcast. A lot of times we see expensive gear either in video shows or the popular shows, but honestly, there's some $60 to $70 USB mics out there, and then using your mobile phone as your video if you're doing a video show, and you're going to get a great quality show. So number 1, you don't need expensive gear. Number 2, just get a solid USB mic and you'll be ready to go. This is the Samson Q2U. Another great option is the Audio-Technica ATR2100X. That title just lost a few seconds for me, but these microphones are about $60 to $70, and honestly, they sound great. We actually have a whole video about USB mics, and I think I've actually run out of videos I can put up here, so just check the video description. All the links are down there. Number 3, when you record, use wired headphones. A lot of times we're tempted to use AirPods or wireless headphones for convenience, but when you do that, there can be latency. If batteries run out in the middle of recording, that's going to be a bad situation. So even if it's inexpensive, like $12 wired headphones you get on Amazon, we'll put links in the description. Number 4, when it comes to podcasts, you can record on any device you have. That's laptop, desktop, even iPad or iPhone. If you record with Riverside, which is the best way to record high quality video and audio with remote guests, there's an app for iPhone, Android, iPad, and you even get 4K video quality when you record from your phone or iPad. If you want to learn more about that, videos in the description. Number 5, the best quality camera you have if you're doing a video podcast, and we recommend you do video so you can share those clips on social media, is probably your phone. It's a 4K camera. It's going to be the best in low lighting if you don't have the perfect lighting or studio situations. And continuity camera with an iPhone and a Mac is a super easy way to get started. Number 6, one of the best pieces of gear to get early on is a good mic arm. Not having to hold the microphone and having a mark that will reduce shocks and taps and bumps for the microphone, it's going to be one of the best quality improvements you can get, and it also looks good if you're doing like a video podcast. And number 7, if you're going to use your mobile phone or maybe even iPad for a video podcast, get an inexpensive tripod so you don't have to hold it or try to prop it up awkwardly with some books. These kinds of tripods are pretty inexpensive, 20 or 30 bucks. We'll put links in the description to a few. Number 8, if you're doing a video podcast, get some kind of lighting. If you have none, then at least sit in front facing a window rather than have it behind you because then you get that silhouette look. But there's some great options, even for about $80. You can get portable lights that are battery powered or the Elgato Keylight Air, which I'm actually using in my fill light right now. Those are great options for around 100 bucks. We'll put some links in the description for those. Number 9, if you are investing in your setup, don't forget sound treatment. Reverb and echo in a room, especially if it's a larger room, is going to make your recording sound unprofessional. It's not going to sound great. You can get sound panels, sound treatment. We'll put some links in the description, but even just having like rugs and soft materials in the room is going to help a lot. And if you're looking to build out a whole home studio space, that link is in the description as well. All right, and tip number 10, when it comes to gear, know how to use your stuff. Even if you have the most expensive gear, like this microphone, the SM7B, everybody likes to use it. If you don't know the proper way to actually speak into this microphone, it's not going to matter how much money you spent on it. And a great way to do that is subscribe to the Riverside channel because we talk about all the mics, audio interfaces, cameras, and everything else. So subscribe, hit the like button, you know what to do. All right, third section, 10 tips for recording and interviews. And number 9 is super key, especially if you're doing an interview style show. Number 1, do your research. If you're a solo, have a co-host, or it's a topical podcast, make sure you do your research and have valuable information you're bringing to the show. And if it's an interview, make sure you do your research on your guests, their past work, books, other interviews they've been on. That's going to help your podcast be more interesting when you have them on. Number 2, when you're about to record, eliminate as many distractions as possible. If you have kids like I do, I let them all know I'm about to record for an hour, close the door, and make sure to turn on Do Not Disturb on all your devices. This way notifications aren't going to be binging, distracting you while you're doing an interview or recording. If you have co-hosts for your show, make sure you collaborate so you actually plan together. You can do that with Google Docs, Apple Notes, lots of different ways to collaborate before you start recording. And if you're using Riverside to record, we actually have a chat window in the studio. And if you use that chat and kind of let everybody know what you're going to be doing during the recording, it should cut down on some editing later. Number 4, AI is a great tool to use in the planning process. You can use things like Notion AI or ChatGPT. They can generate interview questions. It can actually give you topic ideas. And we have a whole video on how to use those tools. That link is in the description as well. Number 5, if you have an interview style show, have a cold email template that you're going to use every time you send to a potential guest. This can have information about your show, the audience size, and why they might want to join the show. Number 6, use a service like Calendly to expedite the scheduling process. And when you use Riverside to record, because you have the same guest link for your studios every time, you can put that guest link and other Riverside information right in the Calendly box. So when someone books a time with you, they have all the information they need to record right there. There doesn't have to be a bunch of emails back and forth. They'll be ready to go with that bullet list. Number 7, for interviews, make guests feel comfortable right off the bat. When someone joins the Riverside studio, let them know we're not recording yet, so you don't have to be on. And you can also help them feel comfortable by sending questions ahead of time before the day of recording so they know and expect what you're going to be asking them. Number 8, plan shareable moments. Whether it's a solo podcast, you have a co-host, or interview, try to line out segments in your planning process where you're going to be able to share that 30 or 60 second clip as a vertical video on TikTok or Instagram Reels. Having those shareable moments is going to be key to growing your show later. And number 9, this is a big one. Be ready for spontaneity, especially if you're doing an interview show and you have a special guest. If they said something interesting or you want to follow a rabbit trail that might be the best part of the show, be ready to do that. Don't be so locked into your notes and your questions that you're not ready to pick up on some spontaneous information. And that's why research is important too, because the more you know about your interview guest or the topic that you're podcasting about, the easier it will be to be spontaneous. And number 10, whatever your podcast is in your recording and planning process, if you're bored, like planning it, if you're bored actually recording it, then there's a good chance your listeners and viewers might be bored too. Again, whatever makes you passionate and gives you energy to discuss on whatever podcast you're doing, make sure you keep that stuff and just eliminate the boring stuff. All right, section 4, here are 10 tips on editing your podcast. I want to share some AI tools. And number 10 is key to retention in your podcast. So let's jump into it. Number 1, when you're editing your show, make sure you're using good tools. And if you record with Riverside, you actually get great tools for editing. The Riverside editor now can remove silences. You can edit via transcript. You can zoom in on the timeline to make those precision edits as you need. And you can even use our Magic Clips editor, which will automatically pull those 30-second engaging clips in just a few seconds. You just download it and they're ready to share. Number 2, learn your audio fundamentals when it comes to editing your podcast. That's EQ, compressor, and noise gate. We actually have a whole video teaching that. You can check it out below. And I walk through the importance of EQing people's voices, noise gate to eliminate some of those background sounds, and compressor if you need to boost the volume or reduce some of those loud sounds in your recordings. Number 3, whatever audio editor you're using, learn about the strip silence or delete silence commands. I actually edit in Ferrite on my iPad, but Adobe Audition also has this, as does Logic, and you can actually strip out silence, or at least parts of the track that are low, and this is really going to help with noise bleed. Number 4, find the best workflow methods for the app you're using. If it's Final Cut, Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, there might be features that will make your process a lot easier, like multicam clips in Final Cut, Premiere, or DaVinci Resolve, or things like compound clips in Final Cut. And we actually have videos on all of those video editing applications specifically. Number 5, if you're doing a video podcast, then you really need to learn multicam editing. It's going to speed up your workflow a ton, and we have a specific video on multicam editing down in the description as well. Number 6, utilize some AI tools for editing your podcast. Things like Autopod for Adobe Premiere, and if you need to edit a specific video, maybe you want to add green screen effects, Runway ML is a great resource for that as well. We'll put links to those in the description. Number 7, as you're editing, try to keep a consistent format episode to episode. Maybe you have a teaser and intro at the beginning, and then you have certain segments within the podcast. This way, listeners and viewers can actually come to anticipate and look forward to those sections. Number 8, as you're editing, don't forget those vertical clips to share on TikTok, Reels, Facebook Reels also, and even YouTube Shorts. Those vertical clips are really going to grow your audience, grow your show, and help you be discovered by more people. Number 9, learn how to repair audio. You might have widely different volume levels, or there might have been some background. Well, learn how to use Isotope RX10 to remove some of that background noise and echo. Or if you use Riverside, you can use the normalize audio feature to make all the levels even. But knowing how to repair audio can make sure all of your episodes sound equally as good. And yes, we have videos on repairing bad audio as well, down there. All right, number 10 for this section, and it is key for podcast retention, is putting the good stuff first. So often people feel like podcasts are a slow burn, where you have some small talk at the beginning and a long intro. You're already bored with me just doing that little example. If you have a great part of your podcast, tease it right when someone presses play. Maybe it's something meaningful your interview guest said or a funny moment in the show. Put that right at the beginning. This way listeners and viewers know they have that to look forward to. All right, last section, number 10. These are 10 tips to help you keep going, keep podcasting, keep putting out new episodes. And number 10, I want to give you some numbers about the podcast industry that are going to blow your mind and hopefully encourage you to keep going. All right, number 1, as a podcaster, you're always going to be looking at that download number. Do I have 50 downloads, 100? Maybe you don't even have that many yet. But don't be discouraged by low download numbers. Remember, podcast listeners are the most faithful. Number 2, don't forget to promote your show. So often, if you're the person editing and producing and doing all the things for the show, it's hard to keep some steam there at the end and actually put it out there. Share the links, put it on social media. But that's so important if you want to find an audience. So don't forget to promote the show. Do those vertical clips. Again, Riverside makes it easy with magic clips. You don't even have to do it. And number 3, don't forget to promote your older shows too. Maybe you forgot to or didn't have a chance back then, but if you had good interview content or funny moments from your older episodes, do that too. And if you recorded with Riverside, you can just search the old transcripts or pull magic clips for those older episodes, and now you can share those as well, and you have more content to share on social media. Number 4, utilize the transcripts for your show and AI tools to create even more content. Again, you get transcripts every time you record with Riverside in over 100 languages, and they're powered by AI, and you can take that transcript and run it through ChatGPT or Notion AI, and make entire blog posts. You can ask ChatGPT to make 10 social media posts promoting this episode based on the transcript. If you want to learn how to do that, we have videos. Actually, they're down there. Number 5, to keep consistency, which is key, change your episode schedule so you can hit the mark. If a weekly show is too much and you find yourself not releasing that often, then switch to every other week or even once a month. Whatever your schedule is, just keep it consistent. Consistency is really one of the most important things to keep listeners and viewers coming back for more. Speaking of, consistency is key. Releasing those new episodes regularly, again, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, is key. You want to make sure you're always in your podcast listeners and viewers' minds, whether it's through clips or new episodes. Number 7, to keep you going, if you haven't added video yet, video is a huge tool, especially when sharing your show in those vertical reels. So adding video is easy. Don't be intimidated. We have lots of videos right here on the channel to help you build a video podcast setup, but also you can use your mobile phone again to start a video podcast with Riverside. We make it easy, and that video content is going to be more engaging when viewers see it on social media. Number 8, as you keep releasing episodes, it's important to look at the metrics. Go into Apple Podcasts, go into Spotify, see the retention graphs, see what episodes are the most popular. And a key piece of information is how many people follow your show, meaning how many people want to be notified of new episodes versus the people that actually listen to the episodes. And if you see some episodes perform better than others, start thinking about why. Was it the title? Was it more catchy or more curiosity driving? Whatever it may be, try to capitalize on those things that the listeners want to hear and see. And if there's parts of your retention graph where people are dropping out, then it's time to rethink those segments, maybe cut that out. Number 9, if you're just starting out, don't worry about sponsors and those big numbers just yet. For many people, the idea of having a sponsor is the feeling like you made it, or that you could finally monetize your passion. But there's actually other ways to monetize. You could do things through Patreon, create bonus content. Apple Podcasts lets you offer subscriptions directly to listeners and they can pay you for that bonus content or early access. All right, and number 10, here's a fact that's going to blow your mind. Yes, there are over 4 million podcasts out there on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but only 10% have 10 episodes or more. That means if you make it past 10 episodes of your podcast, you're in like the top 10% of podcasts. And if you publish consistently even after that, so you have 20 episodes, 40 episodes, then you're actually doing incredibly well in the podcast space. All right, how did I do? 50 podcast tips in 10 minutes. And if you'd like to learn more, again, all the links for the videos I discussed are down in the description. There's a lot of videos there, so sift through them, or just subscribe to the Riverside channel, and you can search the channel for a specific topic like USB mics, audio interfaces, and you'll see all of our videos that come up. And if you have questions about launching a podcast or anything I talked about, leave a comment below this video. We answer all the comments. We'd love to engage with you there. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.